Good day, colleagues. My name is Munya. I am the lecturer for case study classes at ChatterQuest. So I understand most of you know me. I know you guys, but there are some people maybe who are at Parktown that we have not met, or maybe Pretoria as well. So I've just decided to record this short video just so that I can explain a few details about the case studies. Okay, so the reason for this is that we have got students who are doing mostly, we're talking about students who are doing the gateway route. That is, students who have been exempted from objective tests, like from operational level and management level. So they would be starting at case study level. So they do the gateway route, they start to write the management case study exam. So that is pretty much their first exam that they are writing. So what ChatterQuest does is they then ask those students to do a refresher. So they attend classes with the students who are doing E2, P2, and F2 objectives. So they attend those classes. But the issue here is these guys are attending these classes mainly to write the case study. So they also obviously want to hear things that would apply to the case study. So that's what I do in my classes to say, okay, because I am the lecturer for case studies, I will then go to say, in a case study, here, the question might come like this, so you need to be aware of this information. Because pretty much that's what they are looking out for. They are not really worried about objective tests. So now they were raising issues that no, but we are not getting a lot of references about how case studies might be asked in E2 or P2. And also maybe to some extent we can also bring this to operational level subjects like E1 and P1, because there are some students also who are just exempted for objective tests. They are just going to write the operational case study, or some of them do E1 only, and then they go and write a operational case study. So this would just be about case studies. So what I just wanted to say here is just to say, maybe so that we don't have those complaints from students, is that when you are lecturing, it could be E1, P1, P2, F2 even, P1, P2, E1, E2, like that. Okay, so the case study itself, some of you would have done CIMA, so you've done, you might have done case studies, so you know exactly what it is. But some of you may, some people might have done a CCA, or some people would have done before case studies were introduced, so it would be that. So you may not have done the case study per se, but the issue here is something that's very, very small. What my advice is just to say, when you do your lectures, you just need to, for case study purposes, a case study exam is just the practical side. It's just practical because you get a pre-scene about a company, and then when you go to the exam, they ask you about that company, right? So it's just practical. So you just want to give tangible examples in your lectures, or practical examples. That's all. And then you maybe what we're actually doing these things. I can promise you, we're actually doing these things. Maybe the missing link is just to say, for example, if you are those who are doing case studies, this is what the question might come like, and this is how a practical answer would look like. So maybe that's all thing that we really need to talk about. Not that we are not doing it, because it's just that the theory that we are learning in the book in E2 or P2, F2, we just need then to apply that theory to a practical example, to a real world Kanban. So here on my screen, I have put an example of an exam question that might come in the case study. So here I'll start with the E. It's from E2. So it says, explain Edwin. I'm not going to read the other content because we just want to focus on what I really want to focus on. It says, explain Edwin's leadership style and identify leadership style and skill required to drive the changes needed at Drokyo. So you see here, leadership styles, it's something that you teach at E2. So the students would know the leadership styles. But now in the class, because in the exam, they will then be asked to choose leadership styles that apply to maybe this manager or this management or this business. So it's now more practical. So it's just now about, when you talk about leadership styles, you then emphasize to say, if you were going to go to a case study, you need to know the type of leadership styles and where they relate to. So that now, when you are given the characteristics of a manager or how they manage, they are able to apply the leadership style that they've learned. So it's more about application. So technically, the knowledge that they've learned from E2 is now supposed to be applied to a real world situation, Okay, so that's what we want you to just be practical. For example, if a manager operates like this, then what is his leadership style? That's to do it. And then the other question says, explain how Frinda can enhance employee engagement at Drokyo. So in this company here, you would see that the manager was like a dictator. So he didn't listen to everyone. He would just tell you what to do. That's it. So the employees were withdrawn, and they were afraid even to voice their concerns, even if they had opinions. I mean, they wouldn't dare. So now, here we say, explain how this Frinda company, that's the company that is given in that one, in the precinct, how they can enhance employee engagement at Drokyo. So it's now bringing out, how is it that, what are the things that we need to do to make sure that employee participate in the development of the company. So that's something that we also cover at E2. So you could see there, it's the practical side. So we're just taking the theory. So the theories that we have been teaching is right. We just need them to be practical in the case study. So when you teach, you just have to highlight that aspect as you explain these theories, to say, in a real world company, if we have problems with employee engagement, this is how we go around it. Then you highlight those things practically and highlight and talk about in the case study exams. If you're writing the case study exams, you'll be asked about this, and then you just have to explain these concepts, but now you have to link it to the company that you are talking about. For example, in this case, we are talking about Frinda, so you then need to talk about that company and give the points that are required to answer that. I think that would help a little bit in terms of those guys who are focusing mainly on the case studies. Then I have another example of a question. This is from the P aspect, so that we can just look briefly at both P and E. Okay, so you can see here. So from the P aspect, we would calculate in our P2, even P1, a net present value, payback, IRR, profitability index. We know how to calculate this. So when it comes to the case study exams, it's now about using that information that we've done. In the case studies, remember, we don't do most of the calculations. It's done. You are given the figures. But now it's about interpretation. If maybe option A has got a net present value of 745 and option B is 791, why should we choose option B? So it's now the practical side, as you can see there, to say we have learned that a net present value would accept a project that has got a positive net present value. So technically, if resources permit, we can actually do both options A and B. But now we want to go a step further. If we don't have, or if these projects are exclusive, then we're choosing one. Then we want to say we will choose a project with the highest NPV. So that's what we would have done in the classes theoretically. But now here it's practical, where we then need to say, in this case, it means we are going to take option 2 because it's the one that is giving what? A higher net present value, for example. So case studies, it's theoretical stuff that we've done, but now we want to bring it to a more practical example. So in your explanations, just to talk about that, in the case studies, if you are now talking about in a case study, we are saying a higher NPV here, the one that is good in NPV, so a higher NPV. So what it means is, if you're answering the case study exam, if you are given 2 options, you need then to talk about those options. Don't just then come here and say you will take a project with a higher NPV, full stop. Which one? Because now you are actually given the actual project here or options here. So you can't just say higher NPV like we're doing in theoretically, because now it's practical. So you have to go and say, we will choose this one because its NPV is 200,000 higher than for option A. You have shown us 791 minus 745. You see? So just bring that practical flair. That's all we really need to be doing there. Okay. For example, this question number 1 says, firstly, prepare briefing notes for me to use in my presentation to the board. Please use the information I have prepared in note 1 and consider both financial and non-financial. Okay, so we are using information here from this option here, from this to say, according to the initial investment, should we choose project A? According to net present value, according to payback, should we take project A or B? So again, maybe another flavor that we would add there is, each of these you will need to explain in a paragraph. So net present value, a good answer would start by defining what NPV is and what is the decision criteria on the NPV. And this is the theoretical stuff that we are teaching. So now when you bring the practical aspect is where you go in the option and say, in this case, we would choose a project with a lower payback. Maybe you are choosing project A. You explain IRR, what is IRR, what is the decision criteria, and then in this case, which project should we choose when we talk about IRR only and profitability index, and then maybe overall which project then would we choose and with the reasons that we are supporting. So it's more about supporting yourself using the information that you have been given in the scenarios. So that's pretty much what I just wanted to show you, that when you, in your lessons, you just refer to the case study. Whatever aspect you are giving is a theoretical concept. Show us how this can actually apply in the real world. Okay, so whenever you talk about application in the real world, you're already talking about the case study. So what is missing there is, say, if in the case study, we would want you to apply these concepts like this, then when you are doing that, I think our students will be very, very happy. They just want to see, so that we don't just focus on the OTs students, because they're mixed in there. Sometimes you find that in a class, like the class that we have now for management level, I think we've got more students who are doing a gateway than objectives. So they are more interested. In fact, in their minds, they think that in these classes, we should actually be giving them questions about case studies and answering questions about case studies, but that's not it. So we want to try to accommodate them as far as possible by just, as you teach, refer to the practical aspect of things, which is how the case study questions are asked. So I think this was just in a nutshell. And we also have what are called I-CAN statements, which is pretty much the syllabus about the case study exams. So Patience is going to provide you with that, and also a link on the past exam papers about case studies. You might want to look at 1 or 2 papers just to have a more comprehensive understanding of the questions that actually come in the case studies, so that it enhances your understanding as well. So, okay, these are the questions that are coming in the exam, and obviously this, you know how these questions should be answered. So as you teach, you just from time to time refer to the case study, so that we go with these students who are doing gateway and those who are doing objective tests. So at least we try to shoot 2 birds with 1 stone. Right. So in conclusion, I'll just repeat the same thing there. Case study, it's just the practical side of the theoretical stuff that we are teaching. So from time to time, you need just to bring in wherever you're talking. For example, we are talking about risks, business risks. So as you talk about business risks, you just then go to the students and say, look, if we are answering in a case study exam, these risks that we are talking about here, you need then to show them, the examiner, in the case study exam when you are answering. You already know the risks, but we want to know, why is this a risk to the company you are talking about? In other words, don't talk about risks in general. We want you to talk about risk in particular. So the present company you are talking about, whatever its name, use that one to explain why it's a risk in this company. Okay? And also, wherever you talk about risks, you need to talk about mitigation. So don't just talk about risk. Tell us how you're able to mitigate that risk in that company. Okay? So that's exactly what we need. It's the same stuff, but now we want it to apply it to a practical setup. So please, as you go through this, you can always bring that practical aspect and refer to in case studies. Because if sometimes you are doing this, you bring in the practical aspect, but you don't talk about case study. So that's why I say that is what could be missing. So please, as you talk about the practical aspect, bring the case study into it, because case studies can ask any question on any chapter. So it's pretty much the entire syllabus that can be asked on the case study. So as you give examples, bring that in the case studies. You might want to use this information like this. Then that would work very, very well for the students, 100%. And if you might want further information from me, please don't hesitate to contact me. My contact number is 073 665 6728. Repeat again, 073 665 6728. So if, for example, you want a clarification on any of these aspects I'm talking about, you can always ask me, then we can discuss. Thank you very much.